Welcome to Physiology Bites, everyone. My name is Ben, and today we're going to be talking about how blood moves through the heart. In order to do that, we need to look a little bit closer and look at the inner workings a little bit more. When we do that, we can see there's four separate chambers inside the heart. We have a right atrium and right ventricle, and a left atrium and left ventricle. The atria are the first to receive blood. They move to the ventricles, and then the ventricles pump it out, and they pump it by the walls of the heart squeezing in. Now, before we start going into the mechanics of that, though, I want to give you a very kind of simple analogy to make you think about how this actually works and how this functions. Think of the right side of the heart as a pump that supplies the lungs with blood. And the reason it wants to do that, of course, is that when blood goes to the lungs, it will become oxygenated. So the right side of the heart is a pump. The right side of the heart is the pump which oxygenates our blood by sending it to the lungs. The left side of the heart is the left side of the heart is a pump which distributes that oxygenated blood. So the left side of the heart will send blood all around our body. So all our cells can get access to oxygen and other nutrients which are contained within blood. Okay, so that's an easy way to think of it when you look at the heart. Right side is a pump to the lungs. Okay, the left side pumps that now oxygenated blood all around the body. But let's go look at that a little bit closer now to put that into context. I want you to imagine that I injected a tiny little GPS tracker into your vein, and that vein then went, and then that GPS tracker would go through your body and eventually reach your heart. When it would actually first enter the right atrium. So any veins that come from essentially any part from your body except for the lungs, essentially, or the pulmonary veins of the lungs, they would actually, anything but that, would actually be received by the right atrium. And within this right atrium, you'd have deoxygenated blood because the cells of your body have taken out a certain amount of that oxygen and used it for metabolic purposes. So now the right side of the heart's job is to reoxygenate this blood. And so the way it's going to do this is that blood's going to move from the right atrium. It's going to start to fill. This right atrioventricular valve here will open, and blood will move from the right atrium to the right ventricle. The blood will then start to fill the right ventricle, and this will cause an increase in pressure. This will close off this valve. And then what's going to happen is that the ventricle is going to contract. And think of it like if you squeezed a bottle. All right, if you squeezed a bottle and it's filled with water, water ejects out the top when you squeeze it. That's what happens with the ventricle. The ventricle walls contract and it ejects blood, in this case, up into the pulmonary trunk. From the pulmonary trunk, our deoxygenated blood will head to the lungs. The lungs will then oxygenate the blood, and that's because oxygen comes from the atmospheric air. It'll diffuse into our blood, and by binding on our hemoglobin in our blood, we then have nice oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood will then travel back into our left atrium. And much like the other side, okay, it works by exactly the same mechanics. This blood will then flow via, in this case, the left AV valve into the left ventricle. Once it starts to fill the left ventricle, the buildup in pressure will close this valve to prevent any backflow. We don't want blood going back into the atria. And so this ventricle contracts, and again, just like squeezing a bottle, we then eject blood from this left ventricle will be ejected into the aorta, and from the aorta, we now have oxygenated blood being distributed amongst the whole body from head to toe. All right. Now, remember, this all works. Both of those pumps, I described them separately, but they both work at the same time. So what I mean by that is if we looked at a heartbeat in real time, it would actually look like this. Blood would enter the right atria from the rest of the body with deoxygenated blood, but then deoxygenated blood would be coming into the left atria. Blood would then move into the ventricles, and then they would move to their respective locations. The right side is pumping blood to the lungs, okay, for oxygenation, and the left side is pumping that oxygenated blood all around the body. So remember, they're two pumps, but they work simultaneously. And there you go. That's how blood moves through the heart. That's what keeps us living and moving, which is a great thing. Bye-bye.